The morning sun painted the scrapyard in shades of rust and gold. Dae-ho Kim wiped sweat from his forehead as he sorted through the latest pile of alien junk. At 67 years old, his back ached more each day, but the work kept him busy. The cybernetic arm on his left side hummed softly as it lifted heavy metal pieces that would have been impossible for his aging right arm to handle alone. 15 years had passed since the Galactic Liberation War ended. 15 years since humanity had somehow won against impossible odds. Most people called it luck. Dae-ho called it stubbornness. He had been there, fighting on the front lines, watching good soldiers die for a victory nobody really understood now. The galaxy saw humans as primitive fools who got lucky once. Trade ships dumped their broken equipment at his scrapyard outside New Seoul, paying almost nothing for the privilege. The alien traders barely looked at him when they dropped off their loads. To them, he was just another backwards human scrambling for scraps. Dae-ho did not mind. The scrapyard was quiet. It was honest work. After years of war, quiet honesty felt like a gift. His helper Ram was late again. The young man had probably spent the night drinking in the city. Dae-ho shook his head and continued working alone. The new shipment had come from a hegemony disposal station 3 systems away. Most of it looked like standard broken equipment, but something caught his eye. In the corner of the newest pile sat what looked like a large black statue. It was shaped like some kind of big cat, maybe the size of a panther. The surface looked smooth and dark, almost like polished stone. But there was something wrong about how it sat. Real statues did not slump like living things. Dae-ho walked closer. His military training made him cautious around unknown objects. Too many soldiers had died from alien booby traps during the war, but this thing felt different. It felt sad. He knelt beside the black shape and touched it carefully with his cybernetic hand. The surface was warm. Not statue warm, but body warm. Living warm. The thing shifted slightly at his touch. Dae-ho jerked his hand back and reached for the plasma cutter on his belt. Then he stopped. Whatever this was, it was barely moving. If it was alive, it was dying. He looked closer. The black surface was not smooth at all. It was covered in thick fur, matted and dirty. Scars crossed the visible skin in ugly white lines. One eye was clouded white with blindness. The other eye was closed. This was not a statue. This was a living creature. And someone had thrown it away like garbage. Dae-ho had seen enough dying things during the war to recognize the signs. Shallow breathing, dehydration, starvation. This alien had maybe hours left to live. He should call the authorities. That was the smart thing to do. Let Inspector Lee deal with whatever this was. Dae-ho had enough problems without adding alien wildlife to the list, but something in the creature's face stopped him. Even unconscious and dying, there was dignity there. Intelligence. This was not some mindless animal. This was a person. During the war, Dae-ho had been a combat medic before he lost his arm. Old habits kicked in without thinking. He checked for a pulse and found one, weak but steady. He lifted one of the creature's eyelids and saw the pupil respond. To light, good signs. The creature was definitely female, he realized. And definitely starving. Dae-ho looked around the empty scrapyard. Ram would not be here for hours. The nearest neighbor was Mi-young Park, and she lived half a kilometer away. Nobody would see what he did next. He made his decision. Dae-ho's workshop had a small medical kit left over from his military days. He grabbed it and a bottle of water from his lunch cooler. Back beside the alien, he carefully dripped water onto her lips. At first nothing happened. Then her tongue moved slightly, trying to catch the drops. She was conscious enough to want water. That was good. He managed to get a few spoonfuls of water into her mouth over the next 10 minutes. She swallowed weakly but did not wake up. Her breathing got a little stronger. The alien was bigger than he had first thought. Probably 2 meters long from head to tail, with powerful limbs built for running or climbing. Her hands had retractable claws that looked sharp enough to cut metal. But right now she looked like an old house cat left out in the rain. Dae-ho found himself talking to her as he worked. It was a habit from his medic days. Wounded soldiers needed to hear friendly voices even when they could not respond. Easy. There, girl, nobody is going to hurt you anymore. You are safe now. He cleaned the worst of her wounds with antiseptic from his kit. Most were old scars already healed, but a few recent cuts needed attention. Someone had been rough with her. Recently, by noon, the alien was stable enough for Daeho to risk leaving her alone while he worked. He built a shelter from scrap metal sheets to keep the sun off her. He left water within reach and went back to his regular job. Every hour he checked on her. By evening she was awake enough to drink water on her own. Her good eye followed him when he moved, but she did not try to speak or run away. She just watched him with careful intelligence. When Baom finally showed up just before closing time, Daeho had made another shelter behind the workshop where the alien could rest without being seen. "Boss, you look tired today," Baom said. "Maybe you should hire more help." "Maybe," Daeho agreed. "Go home early today. I can finish closing up." After Baom left, Daeho brought the alien a bowl of rice soup from his dinner. She sniffed it carefully, then ate it slowly. When she finished, she looked at him and made a sound like a purr mixed with a sigh. "You are welcome," Daeho said that night. Daeho lay in his small apartment above the workshop and wondered what he had gotten himself into. Keeping an alien without permits was illegal. If Inspector Lee found out, there would be fines, maybe. Jail time, but when he thought about those intelligent eyes and the dignity in that scarred face, he knew he had made the right choice. During the war, good people had risked everything to save him more than once. Now it was his turn. Tomorrow he would figure out what to do next. Tonight, at least one abandoned creature would sleep safe and fed in the shelter behind his workshop. The alien called Kala slept peacefully for the first time in months. 3 weeks passed before Kala could stand on her own. Daeho watched from his workshop window as she tested her legs in the small shelter he had built for her. Her movements were careful but graceful, like a dancer learning to trust her body. Again, she had grown stronger on steady meals and clean water. Her black fur now had a healthy shine, and the scars on her skin had faded to thin silver lines. The blind eye would never heal, but her good eye was bright and alert. When she looked at Daeho, he saw intelligence that reminded him of his old commanding officers. The alien had started helping around the scrapyard without being asked. Her nose could find valuable metals buried deep in junk piles. Her claws could slice through tangled cables that would take Daeho hours to cut. She worked quietly beside him, never getting in the way. Baom had noticed the improvements to the yard, but assumed his boss had hired new help. Daeho let him think that. The fewer people who knew about Kala, the safer she would be, but keeping secrets was hard work, especially when Inspector Lee started asking questions. "Your productivity reports look unusual, Kim," the inspector said during his monthly visit. Lee was a thin man with cold eyes who enjoyed making people nervous. "Your processing numbers are up 30%. How do you explain that?" "Working harder," Daeho said simply. "Getting old makes you appreciate time." Lee walked around the yard looking for anything suspicious. Kala had hidden in the underground storage room they had dug beneath the workshop. She was smart enough to know when to disappear. "I heard rumors about strange sounds coming from your property at night," Lee continued. "Singing, growling, your neighbors talk. My neighbors should mind their own business." Lee smiled without warmth. "Everything in this district is my business. Old man, if you are hiding something, I will find it." After Lee left, Daeho knew they needed help. The inspector would keep coming back until he found Kala. When that happened, she would end up in a government lab or sold to alien collectors who paid good money for rare species. That evening, Daeho walked to the small house next door, Mi Young. Park answered the door with a smile that faded when she saw his serious expression. "We need to talk," he said. Mi Young had been a communications officer during the war. She was good with languages and better with technology. More importantly, she was someone Daeho trusted. They sat in her kitchen drinking tea while Daeho explained everything. Mi-young listened without interrupting, asking only a few quiet questions. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. "You realize this could destroy both our lives," she said finally. "Yes, and you realize I am going to help you anyway." I hoped you would. The next day, Mei Young brought her old translation equipment to the scrapyard. The war had taught humanity to communicate with dozens of alien species quickly. The technology was outdated but still functional. Kala watched the setup with curious eyes. When Mei Young activated the first translation protocol, the alien's ears perked up. She made a series of sounds that the machine translated as, "Hello, who are you?" "My name is Mei Young," she said clearly. "This is Daeho. We want to help you." Kala looked between them for a moment. Then she spoke again, longer this time. The translation came through broken but understandable. "I am Kala of the Voidwalkers. I thank you for saving my life. I have been alone for a very long time." "How long?" Daeho asked. 47 of your years." "Since my people died," the simple words hit like a punch. 47 years alone. Daeho had thought his 15 years of peace were lonely. He could not imagine nearly 50 years without anyone to talk to. "What happened to your people?" Mei Young asked gently. Kala's good eye dimmed. "The hegemony said we were dangerous. They said we were a threat to galactic peace. They made us extinct." "But you survived?" "I hid, I ran, I have been running ever since." Kala looked at her claws. "I'm last of my kind. When I die, Voidwalkers are gone forever." Over the following days, they learned more about Kala's past. The Veltaren had been an ancient species, older than humans by thousands of years. They had been explorers and peacekeepers, traveling between stars to help solve conflicts, but the hegemony saw them as competition. The official records called it a plague that wiped out the Veltaren homeworld. Kala knew the truth. It had been systematic extermination, hidden behind lies and false documents. "Why should we believe you?" Mei Young asked one evening. "How do we know the hegemony was wrong?" Kala disappeared into the storage room and returned with something small and glowing. It looked like a crystal, but it pulsed with soft blue light. "Memory keeper," she said. "My people's history. Everything we knew, everything we were." She placed the crystal in Mei Young's hands. The moment it touched her skin, images flooded her mind, cities among the stars, peaceful negotiations between warring species, children learning to phase through solid matter like ghosts, and then the darkness, ships burning, families running, the systematic destruction of an entire civilization. Mei Young dropped the crystal with tears in her eyes. "Dear gods, they really killed everyone." "Now you understand," Kala said sadly. "I carry the memory of my people. When I die, they die with me." That night, Daeho could not sleep. He kept thinking about Kala's words, the last of her kind. Carrying the weight of an entire civilization's memory, he had saved one alien from a scrapyard. But maybe, just maybe, that one alien could save more than just herself. The next morning brought new problems. Biraram arrived with news that made Daeho's blood run cold. "Boss, Inspector Lee was asking about you in town yesterday. He told people to watch for anything strange around here. He is offering money for information." Daeho looked toward the storage room where Kala was hiding. Time was running out. Soon they would need to make a choice between running or fighting. Either way, their quiet life was about to end. The breakthrough came by accident. Daeho was sorting through a pile of broken hull plating when Kala suddenly froze. Her good eye went wide and she began making urgent sounds that the translator could not understand. "What is it?" Mei Young asked. Hurrying over with the translation device, Kala pointed at a twisted piece of metal in Daeho's cybernetic hand. The fragment was no bigger than a dinner plate, scorched black from some old explosion. To human eyes, it looked like worthless junk. That metal," Kala said when the translator caught up with her rapid speech. "That is from my people's ships. There are memory crystals inside." Daeho looked at the fragment more carefully. Now that he knew what to look for, he could see faint lines carved into the metal surface. Symbols that meant nothing to him, but everything to Kala. "Are you sure?" he asked. "I am sure. I can smell the quantum resonance. My people built memory storage into our ship hulls. Even if the ships died, the memories would survive. Mei Young brought her tools from the workshop. Working. Together, they carefully cut into the metal fragment. Inside, embedded in a protective chamber, were 3 small crystals like the one Kala had shown them before, but these crystals pulsed with different colors. Red, green, and white light flickered through their surfaces like trapped lightning. "These are not personal memories," Kala said, her voice tight with excitement. "These are navigation crystals. Star maps, hidden locations. Locations of what?" Deho asked. "Safe places. My people hid things before the end came. Fruit stores, weapon caches, technology the hegemony never found." Mi Young connected the crystals to her computer systems. The process took hours of careful work, but finally the ancient data began to flow across her screens. Star charts appeared showing systems far from any known trade routes. Coordinates for planets that did not appear on any human maps. "There," Kala pointed at one particular system. "Refuge Station 7. My people built supply bases there 500 years ago. If the crystals are correct, everything should still be intact." But there was more data than just hiding places. As Mi-young dug deeper into the crystal files, she found something that made her face go pale. "Deho, you need to see this." The files contained detailed records of the Velteran extinction. Not the official hegemony version about plagues and natural disasters, but the real truth. Military orders, extermination schedules, kill counts. "They murdered everyone," Mi-young whispered. "Men, women, children. They used biological weapons to make it look like disease." "But that is not the worst part," Kala said quietly. "Keep reading." The deeper files contained intelligence reports about other species. Dozens of civilizations the hegemony had eliminated over the past 1,000 years. The official records called them natural extinctions or evolutionary failures. The truth was systematic genocide, and at the bottom of the files was something that made Deho's blood turn to ice. "Project Cleanup," he read aloud. "Estimated timeline for human management. Phase 1 complete. Phase 2 to begin once subjects achieve full technological dependence." "What does that mean?" Mi-young asked. Kala translated the technical terms. "It means the Galactic Liberation War was not victory for humans, it was set up. The hegemony let you win to make you feel safe. Now they are waiting for the right moment to eliminate your species too." The room fell silent. Everything humanity thought they knew about their place in the galaxy was a lie. They were not lucky survivors of a galactic war. They were the next target on an ancient extermination list. "How long do we have?" Deho asked. Kal studied the timeline data. "According to this, Phase 2 begins when human technology reaches 70% dependence on hegemony systems. Current estimates put that at 18 months from now." 18 months until what? Until they release the virus. The crystal files contain detailed plans for humanity's destruction. A biological weapon designed specifically for human genetics. It would spread through the air, killing 90% of the population within weeks. The survivors would be enslaved as a workforce for hegemony mining operations. "We have to warn people," Mi-young said. "Tell the government. Alert the military." "Who would believe us?" Deho asked. "A disabled veteran, a retired communications officer, and an alien everyone thinks is extinct? They would lock us up as crazy. Then what do we do?" Kala stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the scrapyard looked peaceful in the afternoon sun, but now they all knew that peace was an illusion. "We fight," she said simply. "My people have been preparing for this day for 50 years. The hidden bases contain more than just supplies. They contain weapons, technology the hegemony thinks is lost forever." "What kind of weapons?" Deho asked. His military instincts were awakening after years of sleep. Quantum disruptors. Phase cannons? Void drives that can move ships faster than anything in the galaxy. And most importantly, immunity boosters that protect against hegemony bioweapons. Mi-young was already working on her computer. "I can reach some of my old contacts from the war. People who might listen if we have proof. And I know soldiers who never really stopped fighting." Deho added. Good people who will stand up when the time comes. But they all knew the challenge. The head was enormous. How do you convince an entire species that their greatest victory was actually their greatest trap? How do you prepare for a war that most people do not know is coming? There is something else, Kala said hesitantly. Something I have not told you about my people, about what I am. What do you mean? Velteran were not just explorers and peacekeepers. Some of us were warriors. Void walkers like me were trained for special missions. We can do things other species cannot. What things? Kala looked at the metal wall of the workshop. Then she stepped forward and walked through it like it was not there at all. She disappeared into the solid wall and emerged on the other side. We can phase through matter. Become invisible to most sensors. Move through space without ships when necessary. The hegemony feared us because we could go anywhere, do anything, and they could not stop us. Deho stared at the wall where Kala had passed through. And your powers are coming back? Yes, your kindness healed more than just my body. It healed my spirit. My abilities grow stronger every day. That night they made their plans. Mi-young would contact her military friends and begin spreading the evidence carefully. Deho would reach out to his old unit, the soldiers he trusted most. And Kala would guide them to the first hidden base, where they could find the tools they needed to fight back. But first, they had to deal with Inspector Lee. The man was getting suspicious, and suspicious inspectors were dangerous to people trying to save the galaxy. How do we handle him? Mi-young asked. Deho smiled grimly. The same way we handled difficult situations during the war, we improvise. Outside, storm clouds were gathering over New Sol. Change was coming whether they were ready or not. Inspector Lee came back 3 days later with friends. Deho watched from his workshop window as 5 official vehicles pulled up to the scrapyard entrance. Lee stepped out of the lead car followed by 6 enforcement officers in full armor, but it was the 7th figure that made Deho's blood run cold. Tall and thin with gray skin and 4 arms, the alien wore the dark blue uniform of a hegemony trade inspector. The official patches on its chest marked it as a high-ranking official, but Deho's military training recognized something else. The way it moved, the way it scanned the area. This was no trade inspector, this was a soldier. Stay hidden, Deho whispered to Kala, who was crouched behind a pile of salvaged computers. Do not come out no matter what happens. The group approached. The workshop with Lee in front, trying to look important. The alien stayed back, watching everything with cold eyes that missed nothing. Kim Deho, Lee called out. By order of the Hegemony Trade Commission, we are here to inspect your facility for unauthorized alien materials. You inspected last week, Deho replied calmly. Everything was in order. New reports have come to our attention. Reports of illegal alien wildlife being harbored on these premises. The alien inspector stepped forward. When it spoke, its voice was like grinding metal. I am Trade Inspector Vexhai. We have received credible information about prohibited biological specimens in this location. Deho met the alien's gaze steadily. Feel free to look around. You will not find anything illegal here. But he knew they were in trouble. Vexhai was not here by accident. Someone had told the hegemony about Kala. The question was how much they knew and how far they were willing to go to get her. The search took 2 hours. The officers tore through every building on the property while Vexhai watched with growing frustration. They found nothing because there was nothing to find. Kala had phased through the floor into the underground chamber Deho had never told anyone about. Nothing here, sir, one of the officers reported. Lee's face was red with embarrassment. That is impossible. My sources were certain. Your sources were wrong, Deho said. As usual, but Vexhai was not convinced. The alien walked slowly around the property, stopping occasionally to examine the ground. Near the workshop, it knelt and touched the earth with one of its 4 hands. Interesting, it said. The soil composition here shows traces of off-world proteins. Someone has been feeding non-terrestrial organic matter in this location recently. Daeho kept his expression neutral, but inside he was cursing. Of course, alien food would leave traces. He should have thought of that. I eat imported rations. Sometimes, he said, left over from my military days. Perhaps, Vexai stood and brushed dirt from its hands. But I think we will be monitoring this location more closely in the future. After they left, Daeho waited an hour before calling Kala up from her hiding place. She emerged from the solid floor like a ghost, her face grim. That was not a trade inspector, she said. I know. What do you think it was? Hegemony intelligence? Probably special operations. They know I am here, even if they cannot prove it yet. That evening, Ma Young came over with news that made their situation even worse. I contacted my friend Hyeon Woo from the old communications unit, she said. He has been monitoring hegemony traffic patterns. 3 ships arrived in the system yesterday. Official manifest says they are carrying trade goods, but the ships are all military-class vessels. How many troops? Daeho asked. At least 200, maybe more. Kala's ears flattened against her head. They are not taking any chances. A force that size could level this entire district. Then we need help, Daeho said. It is time to call in the old team. Over the next day, Daeho made careful contact with his former unit members. Most were living quiet lives, trying to forget the war. But when he explained the situation, old loyalties kicked in. Hyeon Woo Cho arrived first. The former engineer was heavier than he had been during the war, but his eyes were still sharp. He took one look at Kala and whistled softly. Well, this explains why the hegemony is so interested in your scrapyard. Jin Ah-song came next, driving an old military transport she had somehow managed to keep after the war. The former pilot was gray-haired now, but still moved with the confidence of someone who had flown through enemy fire and lived to tell about it. How many are we expecting? She asked after the introductions were finished. Unknown, Daeho replied. But assume they will bring everything they have. The last to arrive were Taemin Roo and Sujin Bae. Taemin still worked with explosives, though now it was for mining companies instead of military targets. Sujin had become a hunting guide, which meant she still knew how to use a rifle better than almost anyone alive. Just like old times, Taemin said with a grin that had not changed in 15 years. Except now we are fighting to save the galaxy instead of just humanity. Actually, Kala said quietly, you are still fighting to save humanity. You just know the truth about the threat now. They spent the night planning. The scrapyard would become their fortress, using salvaged materials to create defensive positions. Kala's abilities would give them advantages the enemy could not predict. Most importantly, they would document everything and broadcast it to the galaxy before the final battle. The proof is what matters, Mi Young said. Even if we do not survive, people need to know the truth. We will survive, Daeho said firmly. We did not come this far to give up now. But privately, he knew their chances were slim. 6 humans, and 1 alien against the full might of the hegemony military. During the war, he had seen what their weapons could do. Plasma cannons that could melt through tank armor. Sonic weapons that could stop a human heart from 50 meters away. Still, they had advantages too. They were fighting on their own ground with preparation time and inside knowledge. Most importantly, they were fighting for something worth dying. For there is one more thing, Kala said as they finished their preparations. The memory crystals contain activation codes for the hidden weapon caches. If we can hold out long enough, I can call for backup. What kind of backup? Jinnah asked. Automated defense systems my people left behind. Weapons platforms that have been waiting 50 years for someone to wake them up. Henwu looked up from the sensor array he was installing. How long do we need to hold out? 6 hours minimum. 12 would be better. Against 200 hegemony soldiers? Sujin asked. That is a tall order. Then we better make sure every shot counts, Daeho said. The next morning brought a new problem. Young Sik-han, a news reporter from the city, arrived at the scrapyard asking questions about increased military activity in the area. I heard there have been hegemony ships arriving, he said. Official sources claim it is routine trade business, but my contacts say otherwise. Deho made a quick decision. If they were going to die fighting, they might as well make sure the story got told. Come. Inside, he said. I have something to show you. An hour later, Young-sik was pale but determined. He had seen the memory crystal evidence and understood what was at stake. I can broadcast this from my mobile unit, he said. Live feed to every news network in human space. Good, Deho said, because I think our guests are about to arrive. The horizon, dark shapes were moving against the morning sky. The hunt had begun. The attack began at dawn with a lie. Vexhi's voice echoed across the scrapyard through military amplifiers. This is Trade Inspector Vexhi of the Hegemony Commission. By order of the Galactic Health Authority, this facility is under quarantine. A dangerous biological specimen has been detected on these premises. Surrender now and you will be treated fairly under galactic law. Deho keyed his communication device. This is Kim Deho, owner of this property. I reject your authority and your lies. Come and take what you want, if you can. The first plasma bolt struck the workshop wall 3 seconds later. So much for negotiations, Taemin said from his position behind a barrier of salvaged ship hulls. These guys do not waste time. The hegemony forces had surrounded the scrapyard during the night. 200 soldiers in full battle armor, supported by hover tanks and aerial drones. Against them stood 6 humans, 1 alien, and whatever weapons they could improvise from junk. It should have been a massacre. Instead, it became something the galaxy had never seen before. Deho's team had spent the night turning the scrapyard into a maze of cover and concealment. Salvaged metal created corridors that forced the attackers into kill zones. Hin Wu had rigged sensor networks that gave them perfect knowledge of enemy positions. Most importantly, they were fighting for their home, the first wave of hegemony. Soldiers advanced confidently, expecting easy victory. They met concentrated fire from positions they could not see, guided by sensors they did not know existed. Sujin's rifle spoke from 3 different locations as she moved through hidden tunnels between shots. Each bullet found its target with surgical precision. Hegemony battle armor was tough, but she knew exactly where the weak spots were. Taemin's explosives turned the main path into the yard into a death trap. Remote charges hidden in junk piles sent metal fragments flying like shrapnel. The aliens had expected human weapons. They had not expected human creativity, but it was Kala who truly changed the nature of the battle. She phased through the solid walls of a hegemony tank and disabled its crew before they knew she was there. She appeared behind enemy lines, struck with claws that could cut through armor, and vanished before return fire could reach her. The hegemony soldiers had never fought anything like her. Their thermal sensors could not track her when she phased. Their motion detectors could not predict where she would appear next. In minutes, she had turned their organized advance into confused chaos. What is that thing? One of the aliens screamed over the radio. Hien Wu had tapped their communications and was broadcasting everything to Young-sik's news cameras. Impossible. Vexhi responded, the Veltoran are extinct. Tell that to my dead squad leader, the soldier shot back. Young-sik's cameras captured everything. The galaxy watched live as human ingenuity met hegemony technology and won. They saw Deho's team fighting with salvaged weapons against impossible odds. They heard the radio chatter that revealed the truth about the war, but most importantly, they saw the memory crystal data being broadcast alongside the battle footage. The evidence of systematic genocide. The plans for humanity's destruction. The lies the hegemony had been telling for thousands of years. This is incredible, Young-sik reported breathlessly. The entire official history of galactic civilization is being rewritten before our eyes. The second wave of attackers came with heavier weapons. Plasma cannons that could melt through the salvaged barriers. Sonic weapons that made the humans' ears bleed. Drone swarms that filled the air with deadly energy beams. Jinna's flying skills proved crucial as she piloted a makeshift fighter built from scrapyard parts. The craft looked like junk held together with hope, but it flew like a bird of prey. She dove through the drone formations, disrupting their patterns and creating gaps for the ground team to exploit. "Flying junk pile to base," she called over the radio. "I count 12 heavy units moving to your position. Looks like they are bringing the serious toys now." "Copy that," Deho replied. "How much longer until Kala's backup arrives?" 3 hours. "Minimum," Kala answered from somewhere in the maze of metal. Her voice came from the communication device, but nobody could see where she actually was. "The weapons platforms need time to power up. 3 hours." Against an enemy that was now bringing everything they had, the heavy weapons turned the scrapyard into a hellscape of molten metal and exploding debris. But somehow the defenders held on. Every time the hegemony forces thought they had won, another hidden position would open fire. Every time they advanced, they walked into another trap. Tay-min had booby-trapped half the salvage piles in the yard. Hanwoo's sensors let them predict enemy movements with uncanny accuracy. Most importantly, they were fighting for something bigger than themselves. "This is for every species you murdered," Sujin said as her rifle found another target. "This is for every lie you told?" The turning point came when Vexai made a mistake. Frustrated by the resistance, the alien commander ordered his forces to use prohibited weapons. Chemical bombs that were banned under galactic law. Biological agents designed to kill indiscriminately. Young Seek's cameras caught everything. The galaxy watched as the hegemony revealed their true nature, using weapons of mass destruction against a handful of humans and one refugee alien. "They are using banned weapons," Young Seek reported in horror. "Chemical agents. This is a violation of every galactic treaty." The broadcasts were reaching human colonies across the galaxy. Military bases where human soldiers still remembered how to fight. Civilian populations who had believed the hegemony's lies about peace and prosperity, and they were getting angry. The first sign of change came when a hegemony supply ship in orbit suddenly went silent. Then another. Human crews who had been working peacefully alongside alien colleagues were suddenly asking hard questions about their real purpose in the galaxy. "Base, this is orbital control," a human voice crackled over the emergency channels. "The supply fleet is requesting immediate evacuation. They claim there is a mutiny in progress." Vexai's voice cut through the chatter. "Ignore human propaganda. Continue the mission." But it was too late. The truth was spreading faster than the hegemony could contain it. Across human space, people were learning that their greatest victory had been their greatest deception. That the aliens they had trusted were planning their extinction. Down in the scrapyard, Deho's team was running out of ammunition and options. The chemical weapons had forced them into the underground shelter, where they waited for either rescue or death. "How much longer?" Mi Young asked. She had been wounded by shrapnel but was still monitoring the communications. Kala's eyes were closed. Her remaining abilities focused on distant signals. "The first weapons platform is online, beginning target acquisition now." Above them, the hegemony forces were preparing for a final assault. They had lost nearly half their troops to a handful of humans and were ready to finish the job with overwhelming force. Then the sky lit up with beams of pure energy. The Velteran weapons platforms had awakened after 50 years of sleep. Ancient technology that made hegemony weapons look like children's toys. Energy beams that could cut through battle armor like paper. Shields that turned enemy fire into harmless light. "What is happening up there?" Taemin asked as the ground shook with explosions. Young Seek's cameras caught the incredible sight. Weapons platforms materializing out of empty space, phasing into reality like Kala herself. The hegemony forces, caught completely by surprise, tried to retreat but found their escape routes cut off. In minutes, the most powerful military force in the galaxy was reduced to scattered survivors running for their lives. The war had come home to the scrapyard, and humanity had won. 6 months after the Battle of the Scrapyard, Deho stood on a platform overlooking what had once been his quiet junkyard. Now it buzzed with activity as representatives from dozens of species worked together to build something the galaxy had never seen before. The Free Worlds Coalition had grown from a desperate fight for survival into a movement that spans star systems. The truth about the hegemony's crimes, broadcast live during the battle, had sparked uprisings across the galaxy. Species that had lived in fear for centuries were finally fighting back. Hard to believe it all started with you feeding soup to a dying alien, Mi Young said, joining him on the platform. She wore the blue uniform of the Coalition Communications Division, her rank insignia marking her as a senior officer. Sometimes the smallest acts have the biggest consequences, Deho replied. He still wore his old work clothes, though now they were clean and patched. Some things did not need to change. Below them, Kala moved through a group of young recruits, teaching them advanced combat techniques. Her students came from a dozen different worlds, but they all watched her with the same respect. The last Veltaran had become a symbol of hope for every species that had suffered under hegemony rule. The memory crystals had revealed the locations of hundreds of hidden weapons caches. More importantly, they had contained the genetic templates needed to produce immunity boosters against hegemony bioweapons. What was meant to be humanity's secret execution had instead become their salvation. Status report, Deho asked as Hyung-woo approached with a data tablet. The shipyards on Kepler Station are ahead of schedule, the engineer reported. 12 new vessels completed this month, all equipped with Veltaran phase technology. The hegemony fleets are having trouble tracking ships that can disappear from their sensors. The combination of human manufacturing capability and ancient alien technology was proving devastating to hegemony forces. Ships that could phase through solid matter, weapons that struck from impossible angles, defensive systems that turned enemy fire into harmless energy. But the real victory was not military. It was moral. The latest intelligence reports show 47 systems have officially withdrawn from hegemony authority, Jinnah added, landing her transport on the platform. She commanded the Coalition's rapid response fleet now, striking at hegemony outposts before they could organize effective resistance. Any word from the core worlds? Deho asked. 3 more species declared independence yesterday. The hegemony is losing control of their own territory. Young Sekan approached the group, his camera crew following at a respectful distance. The reporter had become the unofficial voice of the Coalition, broadcasting their message to every corner of the galaxy. Ready for the ceremony? He asked. Deho nodded. Today marked the official opening of the Memorial to the Lost, a monument built where his workshop once stood. Names of extinct species covered the walls in flowing script, each one representing a civilization destroyed by hegemony lies. The ceremony began at sunset. Representatives from every Coalition member species gathered around the memorial as Kala stepped forward to speak. Her voice now amplified by the same translation technology that had first allowed her to communicate with humans, carried across the assembled crowd. We gather today not just to remember the dead, but to promise the living, she said. For too long, the galaxy has been ruled by fear and deception. Species were turned against each other while their true enemy grew fat on their suffering. In the crowd, Deho saw faces from dozens of worlds. Humans who had learned their victory was a lie. Aliens who had discovered their histories were written by their oppressors, all united by the simple truth that freedom was worth fighting for. But today we declare that the age of lies is ending, Kala continued. Today we begin the age of truth. Taemin and Sujin stood with their new units, soldiers from species that had never fought together before the Coalition. The former demolitions expert now trained multi-species teams in asymmetric warfare. The sniper had become an instructor in precision tactics that worked regardless of biology. As the ceremony continued, reports came in from across the galaxy. Another hegemony fleet had surrendered rather than fight. 3 more star systems had declared independence. The momentum was building toward something that had seemed impossible just months before. The latest projections show complete hegemony collapse within 2 years. Mi Young whispered to Deho during a pause in the speeches. Their own military is starting to defect. Good, Deho replied. But we need to be ready for what comes. After winning the war is only the beginning. That was the real challenge. Building a new galactic order based on cooperation instead of domination. Creating institutions that served all species instead of just the powerful. Making sure that what happened to the Velteran never happened again. The coalition had already started that work. Trade agreements that favored small worlds over corporate interests. Defense pacts that protected the weak instead of enabling the strong. Most importantly, truth and reconciliation commissions that expose centuries of hidden crimes. There's something else, Kala said privately after the ceremony ended. Most of the crowd had dispersed, leaving only the core group that had started everything. What is it? Deho asked. The deepest memory crystals contain more than just historical records. They contain genetic templates. Enough information to restore my people. The statement hit like a thunderbolt. You mean ... I mean, I might not be the last Velteran after all. With the right technology and willing volunteers to serve. As surrogate mothers, we could bring back the entire species. Mi-young was already thinking through the implications. The medical facilities on Sanctuary Station could handle the procedures. We would need genetic diversity protocols, careful screening ... Is this what you want? Deho asked Kala directly. She was quiet for a long moment, looking up at the stars that now held more hope than they had in decades. For 50 years I carried the weight of being the last, she said finally. The responsibility for preserving everything my people were. But now I think maybe my real purpose was not to preserve the past, but to help build the future. That does not answer my question. Kala smiled, an expression that had become easier for her since the day Deho had first offered her water and kindness. Yes, she said. I want my people to live again. Not to replace what was lost, but to be part of what comes next. Over the following months, the restoration project began. Volunteer mothers from a dozen species offered to help bring the Velteran back to life. The first births were still years away, but the mere possibility had transformed Kala from the last of her kind into the first of a new generation. The war continued, but its outcome was no longer in doubt. Hegemony forces were retreating on all fronts, their authority crumbling as more species learned the truth about their past. Some fought desperately to maintain power, but most simply surrendered when they realized their cause was lost. Vex-High himself had been captured during the Battle of Kepler Station, alive but broken. Under interrogation, he had revealed the locations of secret hegemony bases and the names of collaborators throughout the galaxy. The information had accelerated the Coalition's victory by months. But for Deho, the real victory was smaller and more personal. It was watching Kala teach young soldiers how to fight for something bigger than themselves. It was seeing his old team become leaders in a cause that mattered. It was knowing that a simple act of kindness had somehow saved the galaxy. Any regrets? Mi-young asked one evening as they watched the sunset from the memorial platform. Deho thought about his quiet life before Kala arrived. The peaceful days in the scrapyard when his biggest worry was sorting metal and avoiding Inspector Lee, that life seemed like a dream now, something that had happened to someone else. No, he said finally. Some things are worth fighting for. Some people are worth saving. Even when you do not know they will change everything. In the distance, ships launched toward the stars carrying Coalition forces to liberate another world. Each vessel bore the symbol they had chosen together, a human hand reaching out to help an alien in need. It was simple, direct, and true, just like the moment that had started everything, when an old veteran decided that no living thing should die alone and abandoned. The galaxy would never be the same. And that was exactly as it should be, years later, when historians tried to pinpoint the moment when the hegemony's 1,000-year reign began to crumble. They would point to great battles and famous speeches. But those who lived through it knew. The truth. It all began in a scrapyard, with soup shared between strangers. And one man's refusal to let cruelty have the final word. The age of lies was over. The age of truth had begun.